Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I'm recording this on Friday night. Just got home from going to Walmart where I did a live stream while I was in my car. I was looking at Facebook and I saw that just a few hours ago, there was a 3.5 earthquake in the Salt Lake Valley. And I decided to look into it, and I came across a really interesting Salt Lake Tribune article that potentially linked this earthquake with the earthquake that took place March 18th of 2020 that caused the Angel Moroni of the Salt Lake Temple to drop his trumpet. So, and this comes the day after Elder Clark G. Gilbert was ordained the new apostle. Okay, so I'd be interested to know if you felt this, if you're in the Salt Lake area or up north or down in Utah Valley. Let me know in the comments. On the live stream that I did, I have a few comments that have come through after I did it. KG says, I'm in Utah County and didn't feel it, but my family all live where it's happened and my mom felt it in West Jordan. But the opposite side is Tooele, and they didn't feel it maybe because of the mountain. Well, I did get some reports of people feeling it in Tooele in a place called Urda or something like that. I never knew that it existed. We have this from GMAC or maybe GMAC. I'm a new full-time senior missionary. I live across the street from Temple Square. I felt the quake. It was very strong, short, but strong. David Sly, my wife and I are in Fillmore tonight. Didn't feel anything down here. Yeah, well, Fillmore is quite a ways away, so that doesn't surprise me. I had a report from somebody in the chat that said that they felt it in Saratoga Springs, but Deborah didn't feel it in Saratoga Springs. Craig Williams down here, it was more felt in West Valley in Taylorsville. Okay, so we're going to dig into some of the details of this story and think about it, think about the implications. Murray, that's my hometown. Jennifer says, my brother and Murray felt it. Heart. Okay, the rest of you get hearts too. Everyone that I read your comment, you'll get a heart. Okay. So before we get into the details, I was talking to my friend Mindy with Temples of Jesus channel, and we were talking about this whole thing of the auroras there was one large aurora event exactly in between the death dates of President Nelson and President Holland. You can see it here in column C, the green column. You count 46 days and you have the aurora, the night of the 11th and the morning of the 12th. And then another 46 days takes you to the day that President Holland passed away. And then in between the passing away of President Holland and the ordination of Elder Clark G. Gilbert, right in the middle, there was another large aurora display, a G4 geomagnetic storm. The aurora was more seen in Europe than it was here in the United States, but it was another one. And this happened right in the middle. Well, Mindy was looking at the dates and the numbers, and she realized that now let's pay attention to column D here in red, this like pink and red color. She noticed that from President Nelson's date of passing away until the aurora, it was 46 days. And then if you count another 46 days, that takes you to the day that President Holland passed away. And if you go another 46 days, that brings you to the day that Elder Clark G. Gilbert was called. So something very symmetrical, something very unlikely is happening here, in my opinion. It was already unlikely with the auroras, but you add this like equidistant spacing between President Nelson, President Holland, and Elder Gilbert. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but I am paying attention. Let's go to the Salt Lake Tribune article. Here's what we know about Utah's latest earthquake, including a surprising origin theory. And this is very interesting if that theory is true. Utah was rattled Friday by another earthquake, the third to be widely felt in less than a month. Let's take a look at that. Excuse me, this is the USGS website, the earthquake map. And let's zoom in Here's Salt Lake, and here's the one that took place just a few hours ago. And then here you have one. It looks like it's just north of Saratoga Springs, west of Lehigh, north of Eagle Mountain. And then, let's see. So the one today, this is showing up as a 3.5. The one near Saratoga Springs, also a 3.5. And then this one over here by the Wyoming border, a 4.7. So all three of these within just a month. The 3.5 magnitude earthquake shook Salt Lake County on Friday evening about 6:32 p.m. with its center on the west side near Magna in West Valley City, according to the University of Utah's seismograph stations. Later on, its origin, though, adds an interesting element. Currently, University of Utah researchers believe that because the Friday quake hit in Magna, it's an aftershock of the even bigger 5.7 magnitude tremor that hit the same place in March 2020 in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, not just in the early days, but it was March of that year that it started to make its way into the United States, and businesses and things started closing down. We're going to look more at that earthquake in just a minute, because if there is a connection, this is something to pay attention to. It's already interesting that it happened the day after Elder Gilbert was ordained. It's interesting that if it's an aftershock from that earthquake, that it's coming the year before the rededication of the Salt Lake Temple. It's interesting that it comes close to when the Salt Lake Temple has finished its upgrade, its seismic upgrade. This is kind of weird. Later on, quote, "We might change our mind in the future, but that's our initial hypothesis. This could be an aftershock of that event," said Catherine Whiddon, a research scientist at the U's seismograph stations. Aftershocks, she said, can stretch long after a quake, even 6 years later. Okay, this is news to me. In my mind, I always thought that aftershocks came, within hours, maybe days, maybe weeks after the main earthquake. I didn't realize that it could last for 6 years. All right, continuing. The big earthquake had several before the likely one Friday. Okay. Later on, there was a 4.7 magnitude quake felt in Utah on January 22nd. That epicenter was about 6 miles south of the Wyoming state border. Another quake on February 5th was centered on northern Utah County near Thanksgiving Point and about 4.4 miles west of Lehigh. That one was also 3.5 magnitude according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Whiddon said having 3 quakes close together like that might cause alarm, but there's good news. Because those 3 recent ones were in such different locations, they aren't related. Okay, well, hold on. Hold on, Whiddon, or however you pronounce it. I'm sorry. From a geological standpoint, I'm sure that's true. I have no doubt that's true from that standpoint. But from a spiritual standpoint, I'm not so sure. We'll have to see what happens. I don't know. There's been interesting things going on lately. Things going on with auroras and with the church. Big changes in the church. We're anticipating the rededication of the Salt Lake Temple. There's craziness right now in the Middle East with Iran. So I don't know. She goes on to say, it's just coincidence. One of the phrases that I despise the most. But from a scientific point of view, sure, it's just coincidence. This is how random distribution looks. Later on, it was felt as far north as Ogden. That's kind of surprising. Let's go to the map. So here's Salt Lake. You can see how it would be felt in Utah Valley, or at least in the northern part of Utah Valley. But Ogden is all the way in the heck up here. So that is pretty far. It was felt as far north as Ogden and as far south as Provo. To the east, residents in Park City might have felt it. And to the west, those in Tooele could have been a little shaken. So again, if you felt it, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know where you're located. Whiddon said, after any tremor, there's a 5% chance it is a foreshock of a bigger quake. Those odds decrease as more time passes, though. Okay, so let's hope it's not that. This video may already be obsolete and irrelevant by the time I have it scheduled to post. I'll probably end up doing a live stream if there's a larger earthquake. But okay, a 5% chance it's a foreshock of a bigger quake. She advised Utah residents to be prepared with a 72-hour kit containing food, water, and medicine in the event of a large earthquake. If a week-long kit can be prepared, that's even better. And then she has some more to say about that. So please be sure that you're prepared. And then at the end of the article, Utah has long been set to have a massive quake, known as the Big One, with a 50% chance of that happening sometime within the next 50 years. Now, I grew up with this idea of the Big One. It always frightened me. I no longer live in the Salt Lake area. Now I'm in Independence. I recently did a video about the New Madrid fault line, and it seems that if there was a large earthquake, it wouldn't really affect Independence and the Kansas City area very much. We might feel it, especially if it's really big. It'd probably have to be like of biblical proportions to cause damage here. But I remember growing up with this fear of the Big One, and they're saying a 50% chance. So you guys, if you're living in Utah, especially along the Wasatch Front, I would make sure to be prepared. It seems like the church is getting prepared with the Salt Lake Temple. Either way, we should all be prepared for that big earthquake that's going to affect the whole world when Christ comes. So I guess it's something that we should all do. So let's go back to the year 2020, March 18th of 2020. Earthquake causes Angel Moroni to drop trumpet from Salt Lake Temple, which of course is one of the most iconic, I guess you would say it probably is the most iconic temple in the church, probably the most widely recognized. It's the flagship temple of the church. It, in a way, it represents church headquarters. So when that Angel Moroni drops his trumpet, it's probably a sign. And by the way, the day before was the 77th day of the year. So what happened was 2 days later, missionary work was changed and reconfigured. Missionaries were called home from foreign missions. And then 5 days after that, all temples worldwide closed due to the pandemic. So, earthquake, as the pandemic is reaching the United States, Angel Moroni drops his trumpet. 2 days later, missionary work takes a hit. And then 5 days after that, all temples worldwide were closed. And then we all know that it was a crazy year beyond just that. We had the April 2020 General Conference, which was really hyped up by President Nelson because we did a Hosanna shout. The new church symbol was introduced. We had a new proclamation, only the 6th in church history. And it came during that general conference. It was a general conference where nobody was able to attend except for the speakers because of the pandemic. And then that year, 2020, was 200 years since the first vision, as well as 400 years since the Mayflower landing. Later on, this event that took place. There's other things. I'm not going to cover all this. Was there something else that I had? I guess not. So pay attention to this date here. We're going to refer back to this in a minute. March 18th, or in other words, 3/18 of 2020. I do want to point out, if you think that connecting that to the second coming is just something that we would do here on this channel or other second coming channels, let's go to this BYU Hawaii I think this is like the school newspaper. Kealakai. Students say Utah earthquake that damaged Angel Moroni statue is a sign of the times. Article written by Brooke Gurian, March 30th, 2020. According to Doctrine from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there will be a second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth sometime in the future, and an indication of Christ's return is great turmoil in the world. And boy, was there turmoil in 2020. Sam Tobin, a junior from Columbia studying business, said a friend shared with him, if you look at the statue without the trumpet, it looks like he's looking at a watch, as if he's waiting for the second coming. So I do believe that a lot of people, aside from just us in this LDS second coming community, took this as a sign. I know that there were other Christians with, a podcast here on YouTube that were talking about it. I had watched a number of them, and they felt like it was significant. But yeah, look at that. It looks like he's looking at his watch. This is a Deseret News article. This was published the same day, March 18th. Oh, no, sorry. This was a year later, March 18th, 2021. So the 1 year anniversary. But look what it says at this part right here. The statue is 12 feet, 5.5 inches tall. It is made of hammered copper and covered in 22 karat gold leaf. The trumpet in Moroni's right hand had always been pressed to his lips as he faced east, a reminder that angels will herald the second coming of Jesus Christ. They didn't need to add that detail, but I'm sure that when people read this article, people that maybe don't think so much about the second coming, it may have put that idea in their mind. I guarantee it did. I guarantee it did. So we had that, and then, so this was before I started my channel. I started my channel August 9th of 2021. And then this was 2022, August 13th of 2022, or in other words, 813. It's the reverse of 318. So 813 of 2022, this happened. Meteor hitting atmosphere is likely cause for loud boom heard in Utah and Idaho. Yeah, this, if I remember right, this was heard all the way down to Provo and then up to the Idaho border with Utah. So we went from this event, which visually you're going from something that's making a noise, a warning call, to quiet, just like how missionary work took a hit during that time. There weren't as many missionaries. Missionaries were brought home, as well as temple work became quiet because it was non-existent for a while. So things went quiet. And then we had this where you had a large boom. And it coincided with something pretty interesting. Let's go to, actually, we got to go back to my timeline here. So you had, okay, here's the meteor boom right here. Earlier that year in the April General Conference. So yeah, just the previous General Conference, look what happened. Let's go to my quotes, Second Coming spreadsheet. This is a quote from June 28th, 2023. And you can find this in Deseret News. The number of Latter-day Saint missionaries is rising rapidly. Fewer children are being born today in most countries, and yet, even with fewer available, more are going out, quote unquote, Elder Cook said. If you look at the youth, their activity rate is higher than it has been. I'm going to skip down. The number of missionaries serving has increased steadily since Church President Russell M. Nelson asked young people to go on missions at the April General Conference in 2022. So you see that back in 2020, you had the earthquake, the trumpet, things went quiet. But then a couple years go by, and in the April General Conference, President Nelson asked for more missionaries. And then a few months later, there was this really loud boom from a meteor. And it was a meteor. I did other videos to confirm it was a meteor that exploded in the atmosphere and was heard all throughout that area. So like a stark contrast between the two events. The number of missionaries serving has increased steadily since Church President Russell M. Nelson asked young people to go on missions at the April General Conference in 2022. From 56,000 at the end of 2021, which was also largely a pandemic year, from 56,000 at the end of 2021 to 68,000 by June 14th of this year. Later on, the influx of missionary applications. The influx of missionary applications led to a need for more members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles to make mission assignments. Typically, 2 apostles assign mission calls weekly, but in recent months, as many as 4 apostles have been making up to 300 calls a week, Elder Cook said. Later on, we're going to skip down to the bottom. As Elder Marcus B. Nash, a General Authority 70 and the executive director of the church's missionary department, said at the Missionary Training Center, quote, "There's just something going on, and I don't know how to explain it other than the prophet spoke in April 2022, and this rising generation that he teaches us was held in reserve are responding." We can go to my spreadsheet called Timeline Missionary Work, and you can see the numbers. In the article that we were just reading from, he was like, well, we think they're going to get to 72,000 by the end of the year, which did happen, at least for like total missionaries. But as of right now, for total missionaries, excuse me, in October 2024 of last year, it was 84,000 total missionaries, according to this newsroom article. And then we were recently informed in a Deseret News article from January 11th that there were 83,000 full-time teaching missionaries. So it has gone up dramatically. There's been a loud boom. And we've seen all these changes come to the church that have allowed for more missionaries. For example, single men, what is it? Single men 40 and older can now serve as senior missionaries. And then we had the lowering of the mission age for sister missionaries. And there were a couple other things too. I can't remember them all. But it's essentially an all hands on deck situation. In July, there's going to be 55 new missions created. And one of them is going to be here in the Kansas City area, of all places. Okay, so we're talking about this earthquake that could be an aftershock from that event. And it does seem like the earthquake in 2020 had significance. It seemed like it had everything to do with the second coming and the Lord's timeline. In fact, I should have pulled this up. I don't even know where to find it, but I think I have a quote that talks about the fact that that earthquake actually like kind of sped up the renovation project. It happened. Things started quicker than they would have because of that. Maybe just like a little bit, maybe like it wouldn't have affected the overall thing, but somebody said that. Yeah, I was right. Here it is. So this is from Newsroom, published May 18th, 2020. So just a few months after the earthquake. It says, the removal of the statue and capstone had long been planned as part of the temple's years-long structural and seismic renovation. The timeline for this portion of the project was sped up following the 5.7 magnitude earthquake in March 2020 that shook the trumpet out of Moroni's right hand and caused other minor damage. So it just gives you with that sense, that feeling of things speeding up. Even though it may not have affected the entire project, it just still, it puts that idea in your mind at the very least. So yeah, just a year from now, I guess a year and a couple months, we're going to have the open house, which is going to begin April of 2027. It's going to run all the way until October 2027. And then, I don't know, maybe in October, November, December, I'm sure in one of those months we'll have the rededication. And I think that's going to be a huge event. I think that's going to be a really big deal. But all right, well, that's all that I have for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.